Hi everyone. Since I had my daughter, I've had a lot of questions, and I guess you could say I had a lot of people who wanted me to share my experience with like giving birth and all the complications I had. It was very hard to be pregnant, especially towards the end. In the beginning of my pregnancy, I had a lot of issues with my belly growing because I've always been very athletic. I've always been very, I guess you could say self-conscious of my body. So whenever I first found out I was pregnant, I was very, I don't know, like I was shocked first of all. Because it wasn't supposed to happen, honestly. I was told I couldn't have kids. So, yeah. So, use protection. Kids, use protection. Um, let's see. I had my baby shower end of March, and I started to get bigger, and I dropped. You can drop anywhere, during like the end of your pregnancy, really, or second trimester. It doesn't mean your baby's coming. Not at all. So you could be dropped for months or weeks or whatever, and your baby's not going to come. So that just means they're like down in place and, like everywhere down there and all that. So, probably like a week or two after my baby shower, I started to have a lot of issues. Now, before I was pregnant, I had really high blood pressure. I have orthostatic, symptoms where if I sit down or if I lay down and then I sit up, my blood pressure skyrockets immediately. And then if I go to stand up, it can drop really low. So it's always fluctuating like really fast, which makes me dizzy at times, which makes me not be able to like grasp anything for a few seconds. So I was on high blood pressure medicine, clonidine, and this is before I was pregnant. And after that, when I was in my pregnancy, I started to have really high blood pressure. Well, they were like, oh, it's fine, you're okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I constantly was like worried because like I knew something was wrong. I knew there was something wrong with my body. The nurses at my OB, they were very rude. Let's just put it that way. So rude. I would call and I'd be like, listen, I don't feel good, blah, 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 like this is happening. And I tell them, and they would be like, oh, you're fine, or oh, you don't need to come in. And there was always this one nurse that I got, and she was rude, like really, really rude. I don't even know how to explain it to you guys. Like, it was just uncalled for. Little to say at the, like, they'll send you like a, like, I guess a survey to see how they did. And I put that the nurse was rude at the end because, yeah. So, I finally got fed up with everything. Let's see. I was probably around almost 35 weeks, maybe 36 weeks, around there. And I was constantly like, I went to my OB. I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. Like, this is not okay. I had dizzy spells. I never passed out or anything. Constantly had a headache. I was swollen. If you guys ever seen pictures of me, I was swollen to the point where like putting my shoes on, because I was able to wear sneakers to work then. I was a bank teller at First National Bank, so I was allowed to wear sneakers because your feet swell. But they were so swollen to the point where I would cry putting my shoes on because it hurt so bad. So I was just excessively swollen, and that's not normal. It's okay if you're swollen, but like being excessively swollen isn't good, I guess you could say. It's a sign of preeclampsia. There's a lot of fluid. If you touch your skin when you're pregnant and like it kind of indents and it stays there, my grandma did this to me one day, it just means you have a lot of fluid buildup, and that's what was wrong with my legs. Like, I had a ton of fluid, like, all throughout my body, I guess you could say. I don't know. I was just excessively swollen. So I ended up going to the hospital. They put me on a stress test, and they were like, oh, you're okay, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, no, my baby might be fine, but I'm like, something is wrong with my body. When you're a mother, before you're pregnant, you don't really think about stuff. Like, if you don't feel good or anything, you're just like, oh, whatever. Unless you Google things like me, and then they say you're gonna die in like 2 minutes, which, whatever. So you kind of get like this instinct already where you're just like, something's wrong, like, I know something's wrong, and you need to trust that gut feeling. Now, if you're constantly thinking something's wrong and you don't really have any symptoms of anything, you're probably fine. Not saying that nothing might not be wrong, but I'm just saying you probably are fine. So, I just lost my train of thought. So, I kept going to the hospital, and then I had a midwife. Her name was Charlie. She was great. She wanted me to take 24-hour urines, so I did that over the one weekend. After I was done with my 24-hour urine, I took it back to the hospital. My grandma came with me. I got blood work done. I hate needles, so that was a big deal. But the lady was like super fast. And I ended up having to take multiple 24-hour urines. Like, it was constant. So the last time I took a 24-hour urine, I took it back to my OB, and that was May 5th, but that Tuesday or Wednesday before, so that would have had been like May 2nd or May 3rd, something like that, I ended up going to the hospital for the same reasons. And every single time I took this 24-hour urine, they were making me take that, because if you have protein in your urine, then that's when they're like, you have preeclampsia, like, this is what's gonna happen, like, that's it. So I never had protein, but I had every other symptom but protein in my urine. And they were worried that, because like preeclampsia can like happen like overnight, like it can just like appear, like, you know what I mean, like it's just like something like that. So my midwife, Charlie, was like, listen, you need to, you're going to go see Dr. O'Malley, which was one of my OBs. I had Dr. Jansen, I had Lindsay, I had like 4 different OBs, because like they want you to have multiple ones certain places you go, instead of like one's not on call that night, one can't make it, so multiple OBs, so you're comfortable with them. So, and I love Dr. O'Malley, he was great. So, and he was the one that was keeping up with me throughout I was in the hospital and stuff like that. So she was like, okay, you're going to be induced 39 weeks. Like, this is what's happening. We just want to take precautions because, we don't want you to develop preeclampsia and stuff like that. So May 5th, I had an appointment at, I think it was like 8 in the morning. Saw Dr. O'Malley. He put me on a stress test. I was like in there for probably about 30 minutes, and I was having contractions. I couldn't feel them though. But they were up and down, like constantly. So I gave him my 24-hour urine when I first got there, put me on a stress test, and then he's like, okay, we're gonna do one more thing. And I was like, okay. So he took me into one of the rooms, and when I got into the room, he was like, lay down. I thought it was like an ultrasound type thing. So he's like, looking at my belly and whatnot, and I'm out to here. And he was really quiet, and he wouldn't let me look at the monitor, and he goes, you're having a baby today. And I was like, why? I was 37 weeks. I was supposed to be induced two weeks later, you know what I mean, like at 39 weeks. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, you're supposed to have, like, I think he said 5 liters of fluid, like amniotic fluid, and Anna was down to 2. So Anna was losing fluid, and at that point I was freaking out, because your fluid inside of your, in your womb and stuff, that's like, they start to breathe in it, they start to swallow it, That's how their muscles and everything else, like, you know, it just helps them. Like, that's what they live in. And whenever they lose that fluid, that's a sign of preeclampsia. Now, nobody ever told me if I had preeclampsia or anything afterwards. So he was just like, wait for the call, you know, and we'll go from there. Like, they're going to call you, and then you're going to go to the hospital, and you're being induced today. And at that point, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, or 9:30, around there. And I'm like, I can't do this right now. I can't have a baby right now. Like, I'm not ready for this right now. Like, I was freaking out. Like, whenever you're like, if you're being induced or when your water breaks, it's like more of like a shock. I think being induced is way more, it kind of hits you at that point, especially if it's very quick. They're like, you're being induced, and that's what happened to me. So I walked out into my car. I sat there. It was pouring. It was like raining so hard. I walked out to my car with my belly huge, and I'm sitting there, and I'm calling all my family members, everyone. I am bawling, like hysterically. I'm like, I can't have her right now. Like, I am terrified. Like, she's losing fluid. Like, I don't know, you know, I was just freaking out. So my grandma was down in Mississippi visiting, and she even told me before she left, you can't have Anna until I come home. And I was like, okay. So that didn't happen. And my mom lives in North Carolina, and she was supposed to come up, like, you know, 2 weeks later when I was being induced and blah, 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 or whatever. So I'm calling everyone. I call my grandma. She's like, okay, I'm coming home. Gets on a flight, and she's there probably, you know, a couple hours or a little bit more before I actually had Anna. So she got there like right in time. She was like, as soon as I said I'm having her, she was on that plane. My mom started driving up immediately. So after I leave the parking lot, I go to Kmart, and I'm bawling in Kmart. I am walking around just throwing everything in the cart. And if you know me, I can be kind of procrastinator. So I was like procrastinating, like actually having Anna because I was terrified. So I'm in Kmart throwing unnecessary stuff in this cart that I don't need. Like my hospital bag, Colin's hospital bag was already packed. Like nothing, I didn't need anything. But yeah, I'm throwing all this crap in the cart. I'm on the phone with everyone. People keep calling me. And in the middle of the store, I get a call from the hospital. And they're like, hey, Kaya, you need to come in at 11 where, you know, you're being induced, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, hang up, start crying. So I go to check out, and the lady's just like looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm having a baby. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm being induced. And she's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, in like an hour. And she's like, okay. So I leave, go get McDonald's as I'm still procrastinating everything. And, you know, Colin's contacted, everybody's contacted, his mom, Tina, you know, everything. And we live with his mom. So she's like, okay, I'm on my way home. You know, like, we'll get in the car, get all the hospital bags, stuff like that. You know, and, you know, everything. So we go pick up Colin. And he's like smiling to the car, and as soon as I see him smiling, I'm bawling. So we get to the car, drive to the hospital as we're eating McDonald's, and I couldn't even really eat everything because I was just so worked up, and I was so scared, and I was just like not, like, my mind wasn't like processing everything. So we get to the hospital, have my room ready, and it was very nerve-wracking for me. They got me in a gown, you know, started IVs and everything. I ended up, I had to take a group strep B test, which pretty much they require for everyone now. It's not like sexually contagious or, you know, like transmitted or anything like that. It's just something that your body like has, I guess, when you're born or something like that. I don't know. So I ended up having group B strep, and they were supposed to tell me that like 2.5 weeks ago. Nobody ever contacted me. So I get to the hospital, they're like, okay, well, you need penicillin. And I'm like, what? So my whole labor, I'm like having penicillin and everything. Well, they give me like this pill. It wasn't inserted, like I had to take it orally. I can't remember the name of it. And they started that at around 11:30, and they were supposed to come back every 4 hours and give me more. Well, yeah, no, I never had this OB. He came back at 8 o'clock that night, okay? So, May 6th, between that time frame, between 11 and 8, I'm having serious back labor. Back labor sucks because it's all in your back, like all like in your back, not in your belly or anything. It's in your back. So when I say that sucks, it sucks because like I was so worn out. Every time I had a contraction, I would like arch back, and like I constantly was sitting on like the exercise ball bouncing. Like every time I had a contraction, I'd start bouncing because it felt better. And I had all these IVs, and so when the OB came back at 8 o'clock, he's like checking me out, checking my cervix and everything, and all of a sudden he breaks my water, and I'm like, great. So back contractions kept starting, got way worse, and I started walking the halls and doing all that. Colin and my mom was there by then, and my aunt and everybody else. They ordered, what was it? Oh, jeez. Jimmy John's. I ordered like 3 cookies and chips, and I only, like, not even one. I don't even think I ate any. And, the next day, like, throughout the whole night, Colin stayed up with me. My IV, like, nothing was in it, and we kept pressing the button, and nobody was coming to, like, turn it off. So the monitor actually died. I had nothing in the bags. I just had, like, stuff hooked up to me, like, and there was nothing going into me. So finally a nurse came in at, like, 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, start the jacuzzi, get me in there now. So Colin went to bed because I was like, you need to get a couple hours of sleep because we, been up. He was at work. It was just a lot. So he went to sleep, and I'm in the jacuzzi. Like, I had my back on the jets because it felt good. Every time I had a contraction, holy cow. Like, so I ended up sort of falling asleep in the jacuzzi, but then, like, afterwards, like, I'd wake up when I had a contraction, and my contractions were, like, they were pretty close. So fast forward a little. The next morning, everything was fine or whatever. Probably around like 12 to 1. Well, around 12 they gave me Stadol. Well, she said, this is going to make you feel a little like loopy. And I was like, okay, as long as I can get some sleep, and because it makes you tired and stuff. And it's like a painkiller. So she was like, okay, like, here you go, gave it to me. Everyone said that I was like cracking them up, like I was like joking around, blah blah. And then I finally fell asleep, I think for like 30 minutes maybe. And then after that wore off, probably like an hour later, I'm like, I need an epidural, like give me an epidural. So the anesthesiologist came in, my nurse was in there, they made everyone else leave except Colin. So he's like telling us blah blah blah, I didn't want to look at the needle because the needle's like this long. So I was like, yeah, no. So he's like, okay, you gotta bend over, arch and like whatever. And mind you, like when you're pregnant, like your belly is huge, so like bending over is like hunching over, it's a little hard. So I'm like hunching over, and he sticks the needle in, and Colin's like in front of me, and all of a sudden I start having a contraction. Now remember, I just said when I had a contraction I arched my back. So I started arching, and he pulled the needle out. He's like, okay, we'll wait after this contraction, blah, blah, blah. Next contraction. Sorry, the monitor's on. Anna's sleeping. So he puts the other, like, after that contraction, he goes and, like, puts the needle in again, and I started having a contraction again. He's like, okay, Colin, like, keep her down, whatever. So he actually gets it in. So, and then after that, like, it felt so weird. Like, it gets cold when it goes through your back, because, like, it's like connected, like, up through your back, and, like, there's a wide, like, a cord, and, like, it's like fentanyl. And the fentanyl comes through, and then it, like, makes you, like, you get cold. So, but it, like, supposed to numb your legs and everything like that. So, got the epidural in, everybody came back in. We're all talking, I couldn't get out of bed then anymore. And then the epidural stopped working. And I could feel everything. So then they came in, tried to fix it, because it's in like a lockbox, and then you have to press the button, and like every 20 minutes or something. So there was like an air bubble in my epidural. So they tried like fixing it, and they said they fixed it. But I pressed it like 2 times and it stopped working again. So fast forward a little, my contractions hurt really bad. I handled it very well. I never screamed or anything. Like, I was just more of like, I just stayed quiet when I had a contraction, and I was just like making faces, and I'd arch my back. Other than that, I never made a sound. I excuse me, I never, like, you know what I mean, like, I was very calm throughout the whole thing, and I never went to like birthing classes or anything. So around 8 o'clock, 7:30 maybe, my OB Lindsay comes in. Well, she was like helping me through that day. I love her. Love her. And she comes in and she's like, "Hi, Kaya, blah, 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 whatever." And, you know, she's talking to everyone. And then she's like checking me. She kept checking me throughout the day. And then all of a sudden, late that night, she's like, "Okay, time to start pushing." Now, mind you, like, back in the day, if your water broke after 24 hours, you're having a C-section. They don't do that anymore. As long as you don't like start getting a fever or an infection or anything like that, then you're giving birth naturally. So she's like, time to start pushing, and I'm like, great. So, you know, all of a sudden, big lights come on, table drops, you know, everything like that. I have my mom over here holding this leg, Tina's over here holding this leg, because my mom, Tina, and Colin were in the room. And Colin's up by my head, and she's like, "Okay, this is what I want you to do," you know, like you know, breathe and push, whatever. So I'm doing that, and then all of a sudden, I can start lifting my legs. Like, I can start, like, feeling, like, it wasn't, like, so towards out my labor, I was pushing for 2 hours. So I was in labor for, like, 32 hours, and I was pushing for, like, 2. It was something. I was in labor for over 30 hours, let's just say that. So before pushing, like, I was in labor for over 30 hours before pushing. So, after I started, like, pushing and everything like that, and I could start feeling, like, they had to roll me on my side, and I started pushing on my side. Like, so, like, this one leg was, like, down, and the other leg I had to, like, pull all the way up here, and I was, like, pushing like that. So, and they kept, like, I was getting really hot, so they had to, like, keep, like, putting everything on me. But, like, earlier in that day, I had to have an oxygen mask on me because Anna wasn't getting enough oxygen. It was just, like, yeah. So, after that, after I was pushing and everything, you know, she was like, "Okay, she's coming. I need you to do this, this, and this." And I'm like, oh my gosh. So Colin starts, like, walking around, and he said that he wasn't going to look at anything. He didn't want to see the placenta, blah, blah, whatever. My mom's like, you know, everybody's just like, it was like, okay, so it's a big deal. Anna's coming. That's it. So I start, like, pushing, and, like, I couldn't feel, like, my contractions were just, like, all together at that point. Like, my back labor was terrible at that point. So, like, whenever I was having a contraction, I didn't even know because my back just constantly was hurting. So I was like, okay, you guys have to tell me when I'm having a contraction because I can't tell. So they would be like, okay, you're having a contraction. So I'd start pushing. Well, like, right when Anna was coming out, she's like, okay, you're having a contraction, push. So I started pushing, and she was like, okay. And I was like, nope, I'm pushing her out. I'm not, nope. So I just kept pushing, and then Anna came out. So after that, you know, like, cut the cord. Colin was, like, by the OB, Lindsay, like, looking at the placenta. You know, he cut the umbilical cord, all that stuff. And when they take the placenta out, like, they have to, like, push on your stomach, and then you have to, like, push it out like a baby. It's really gross. So, moral of the story is, preeclampsia is very, very serious. Like, I didn't necessarily have preeclampsia that I know of because, like, losing amniotic fluid is actually, like, a symptom of preeclampsia. Just please be aware, and if you have a gut feeling that you're not feeling good, go with that gut feeling. It's very serious. People don't think that being pregnant is serious, but it's very serious. Like, you're carrying a child. Like, your body, yes, your body is made to carry a child, but it can be very dangerous because there's so many complications that can happen, and it's very, like, you don't want to take a risk. I followed my gut instinct even after the nurses was like, oh, you're fine. No, I'm coming in, set the appointment, this is what's happening. And I am so grateful that I followed my gut instinct, because if I were to have waited and been like, oh, 39 weeks, you know what I mean, not going back to the hospital or anything like that, I could have possibly, if Anna had no more amniotic fluid left, she would have died. Like, that's what they live in. So, and then if she, like, I could have had serious complications. Like, it's no joke. So, please take care of yourself. Please, please, please follow your gut instinct, and please just take care of yourself and your baby. There is nothing more than having a healthy baby and holding your baby and, you know, everything like that. And, you know, I see people on my timeline who have lost their babies, and whenever I see that, it breaks my heart, because it is something that, like, you can't, I'm getting emotional. It's very hard for them, and, sorry, it makes me sad to see people who have lost their babies, because, you know, that, like, kills you inside. So I could only imagine if that were to have happened to me. You know, my prayers go out to you guys. It's never gonna get easier, but, you know, in time it will. And you just have to, I'm not, you know, religious people, whatever, just keep praying. Like, you will get through it. And anybody who's having complications now with their pregnancy, or they feel sick, or, you know, your blood pressure is extremely high, follow your gut instinct, because it could lead to some serious complications. And, you know, your OB might not talk to you about it, because, like, I went and saw this one OB, like, when everything first started happening, and she's like, and I mentioned preeclampsia, and she's like, and she never went into it. She never, you know, whatever. Like, it was, like, it kind of was, like, detoured. Like, they didn't want to get into it too much, and just, people don't realize that this is our bodies, and we know when something is wrong. So, just take precaution and stuff like that. You know, a lot of people, like I said, have asked me. I have shared my story with people, and I think that it, like, kind of calms people down, because having a baby is, like, serious. Like, you are giving birth to a child who is, like, a little person who is gonna be, like, dependent on you, who, you know what I mean? And, like, I feel as if, like, when you share stories with people, it definitely brings them more of, like, awareness of things. And also, like, if they have questions or anything, like, when people come to me with questions, like, it feels good that I can answer them, because, like, I didn't just have an easy delivery. I didn't have an easy labor. I didn't have an easy pregnancy. So whenever somebody can come ask me questions, I am so thankful that they do sometimes, because some people are just like, high blood pressure, whatever, or feeling sick, whatever, or dizzy spells, whatever. I mean, yeah, sometimes, like, that all goes in together with pregnancy, and, like, a lot of the things that we experience are, like, normal pregnancy, like, but half the time, you just need to, once again, take precaution. So, yeah, I'm glad I shared my story. Anna's gonna be waking up soon. I hear her moving. So, I hope that you guys, you know, everything's gonna be okay with everybody who's pregnant or have a baby. Congratulations and stuff like that. Keep doing what you're doing. And, yeah, have a good day.